All games were played away from South Bend. It took 155 days to build a stadium. And everybody, I just heard, what? Remember, 1929, Great Depression. Nobody had work. We had work here.
Yeah, a little bit.
The lower bowl originally seated 55,000 people. That lasted a grand total of 4 weeks. They sanded all the numbers off the California redwood bleachers, gave everybody 17 inches to sit on. Now tomorrow you might enjoy 17 inches. It might be a little chilly. And we got it up to 59,000 guests. Stayed that way until 1995. When we put this second bowl on, that bowl took 2 years to build. But let's go back to the original one. The original one cost $800,000 to build. 60 years later, the second bowl edition cost $50 million.
Whoa.
You haven't even heard the end of it. Because in 2014, we started what was known as the Crossroads Plaza. And in the south end is the music. That took 3 years. It was completed this year. 3 years. Cost $400 million. So tomorrow, you're going to be in a stadium that's got 78,000 guests. It's designed after the University of Michigan, the big house. Smaller scale. Rockne had the foresight to realize that there could be 3 additionals on this. We used one before we varied into the Crossroads. Rockne coached 1 year here, 1930. First game against SMU with a dedication game against the United States Naval Academy. Rockne passed away March 31st, 1931. The winningest coach that was ever here. If I'm boring you, please tell me to stop and I will.
Please, you don't stop.
1920. Rockne's second year. He started coaching in 1918. There was a guy out passing in what was known as Cartier Field, the original football stadium. When you go up that ramp and look at Touchdown Jesus, Cartier Field was there. But this gentleman was passing the ball, punting the ball. Rockne goes running out. Son, my name's Rockne. I'm the football coach. Young man looked at him and said, how you doing, coach? My name's George Gipp. He said, George, how about playing football for Notre Dame? No, thank you, coach. I came here on a baseball scholarship. I'm going to pitch for the Chicago Cubs. It was 100 years too early. 2 weeks later, he saw the same thing. Rockne went out and said, George, you got to play football. George relented and he played football. 1920, consensus All-American. Held records here until 1967 for passing and 1977 for rushing. Still holds to this date the best overall average of yards per carry in collegiate football history, 8.3 yards. But in 1920, we were playing Northwestern outside Chicago. George had a cold. Rockne was not going to play him. It was a very, very tight game. So he goes out and says to the rest of the team, all right, I'm going to put Gipp in, but he doesn't touch the ball. First play, guess what? George Gipp gets the ball, throws a 55-yard touchdown pass, and Notre Dame goes on to win. But with that cold the following week, he was out one night. We want to believe that he was studying. And he could not get back into Washington Hall. Back then, midnight, curfew, doors were locked, you couldn't get in, you couldn't get out. He spent that night on the porch of Washington Hall. But that cold went to strep throat. We did not have the medicines we have today. And from strep throat, it went to pneumonia. He wound up at a local hospital. Rockne went to visit him. Gip looked at him and said, "It's okay, Rock. I've got to go. But I'll be all right." But when the boys are up against it and need some inspiration, again, I'm paraphrasing, said, "Go out and win one for the Gipper." George Gipp passed away December 14th, 1920, at the age of 26. Rockne did not use that speech until 1928. His worst year. He wound up with a record of 5 wins and 4 losses. We were playing Army, New York City, tied 0-0 at halftime. The boys went out of the locker room. They'd never heard of George Gipp. Tore the door down and went out and kicked off the Army. Army scored. That was the only time they did score because Notre Dame came back to win that game 13-7. But on that 1928 team, there were many All-Americans, but one who was really instrumental. Now this is my opinion, so take it for what it's worth. I'm prejudiced about Notre Dame. Knute Rockne was the greatest coach ever. But on that 1928 team was the second greatest coach in Notre Dame history, a fellow by the name of Frank Leahy. But we played Navy. We're going to play Navy in 2 weeks. Longest continuous rivalry in collegiate football history. Starting in 1927. If USC had kept up their work during the Second World War, because they were afraid to come across country, they would be the longest one. 2 weeks later, United States Naval Academy played Notre Dame. So USC's out of the picture. But the real story about the United States Naval Academy is 1943. Notre Dame, an all-male school. Second World War. All the students are gone away. We've got less than 800 students here in South Bend. We were on the verge of going bankrupt. We wrote a letter to the Army, said, "How'd you like to have your cadets here, train here?" "No, thank you. We have West Point." Somebody got the idea, hey, there's this guy in Washington. His name is Nimitz, who became a Rear Admiral. They sent him a letter. He said, "We'd love to do it because we have a Naval Reserve training north of Chicago." We graduated 1,500 naval cadets, kept Notre Dame afloat to this day. So that's why there's mutual admiration that you'll see if you watch the game in 2 weeks. When Notre Dame goes to sing their alma mater, the Naval Academy will be behind them. And when the Naval Academy has theirs, we'll be behind them. Now I'm going to give you one more tidbit. This is one you take to your buddies who think they know everything about Notre Dame. In the north end zone, there's 9 hash marks. In the south end zone, there's 9 hash marks. 9 to 9 is 18. They're 42 degrees to the Golden Dome. 1842 when Notre Dame was founded. Thank you very much. Go enjoy yourself.